So, what if you lived in the future, 1,000 years from now? I know. It sounds like the start of some flashy sci-fi adventure, where everyone zips around on hoverboards and communicates exclusively in glowing emojis. But don't worry, that's not what we're doing here. There are no loud lasers, no galactic battles, no stressful cliffhangers. Not in this story. Instead, we're going to imagine something much calmer, much quieter, and dare I say, much more soothing. You, living your ordinary daily life, just 1,000 years ahead, the year 3025. Long after your favorite mug has been broken, long after every app update has finished installing, long after today's headlines have turned to dust. By then, your world will be someone else's archaeology. But people will still wake up, they'll still eat breakfast, they'll still look for a cozy corner to sit in, and they'll still want to rest at the end of the day. Because no matter how shiny the technology gets, humans remain remarkably consistent in their need for naps. So tonight, let's take a slow walk through that far-off life. Nothing dramatic. Just the details. The gentle hum of a home that takes care of you. The soft glow of a morning in the future. And the quiet feeling of being alive in a time you'll never see. It's a thought experiment, but with yawns built in. And who knows? Maybe, in the year 3025, someone will be telling a story about what it was like to live in your time. With the same amused tone we're using now, wondering how you managed with your clunky gadgets and endless passwords. For now, though, let's leave them to the future, and step into it ourselves. Imagine, if you will, the very beginning of a day in the year 3025. There is no blaring alarm clock, no buzzing phone on a nightstand, no urgent pressure to fling yourself into the day. The home itself has already noticed that you are stirring. It has tracked the slow rhythm of your breathing, the subtle shifts of your body in rest, and it has begun to create the faintest suggestion of dawn. The room is quiet but not empty. The walls themselves are alive with soft material that dampens sound yet allows a faint resonance, like sleeping inside a seashell. Outside there may be a city, or a village, or perhaps the preserved stillness of a natural reserve. But you do not hear traffic. You do not hear clattering bins or rattling radiators. You hear only a hush, broken occasionally by the distant sound of air moving through green spaces that surround your dwelling. The home begins to glow. Light, not from a bulb, but from the very surfaces of the room. At first, it is indistinguishable from starlight, as though you are floating in the last moments of night. Then it grows warmer, a pale silver drifting toward gentle gold, designed not to shock but to soothe. The future has learned. Mornings should not be battles. You rest there, in a cocoon of engineered calm, and allow the room to wake before you do. The next layer of waking is temperature. Your bed, if one can even call it a bed, is more of a surface that knows your body. It is neither too firm nor too soft. It shifts with you, realigning quietly to cradle each limb in slow equilibrium. As the light grows, the warmth beneath you adjusts, not all at once, but with a patience that borders on kindness. There is sound now, though it is subtle enough that you may not even recognize it at first. A faint hum, patterned not in mechanical rhythm but in natural cadence. The sound of wind crossing water, or the echo of leaves trembling somewhere beyond the walls. It is not a playlist, not something chosen hastily the night before, but a carefully tuned soundscape that changes each morning, the way the sky itself never looks quite the same twice. In this future, waking is an event not of interruption but of continuation. You are not jolted from one state to another, you are carried. The light carries you from shadow to brightness. The warmth carries you from stillness to motion. And the sound carries you from dreams into waking thought. And all the while there is no hurry, the day is waiting, that it does not shout. At last your body remembers itself. You stretch, not in a clumsy, cramped way, but in a long, luxurious unfolding, as if every joint has been rehearsing for this exact moment. The bed tilts ever so slightly, easing you upright without demanding effort. It is as though the furniture itself has been designed to avoid all struggle, guiding you into the new day with unshakable patience. There are no chores to rush toward immediately. The home has already managed the air quality, the water temperature, the preparation of what you might eat. You are, for the first time in what feels like centuries of human history, allowed to wake at a human pace, a pace that honors the fact that mornings are fragile. You linger in this softness, perhaps for minutes, perhaps for longer. Time in 3025 is measured differently, not in abrupt deadlines, but in pulses of energy, in cycles of light and dark that adapt to the body's rhythm. And so you do not spring from the bed, you drift away from it, feeling more placed in the day than pushed into it. This is waking up in the future, not a battle, but a welcome. Not the clamor of urgency, but the long, slow unfolding of another day, in a world that has finally learned the art of stillness. Food, in the year 3025, is not something snatched between tasks or gulped down with distraction. It is not wrapped in plastic, rushed through with eyes on a screen, or hurriedly prepared while thinking of other things. Food is treated the way ancient people once treated fire, as something vital, elemental, and worthy of reverence. Much of it is grown, though not in the way you might imagine fields or farms stretching endlessly over the land. Instead, greenery is woven seamlessly into daily living spaces. Your home might carry its own gardens within the walls. Plants rooted not in soil but in nutrient mist, leaves unfurling gently in chambers of light. These plants are not silent decorations but quiet companions, cultivated with attention and patience. They are tended automatically, yet also visited by human hands. Because there is still something soothing about brushing a leaf, smelling the faint sweetness of growth, or harvesting a cluster of fruit that has ripened overnight. There is also food cultured in other ways, grown from cells, assembled from proteins and minerals in slow, deliberate processes. It does not come from animals in the way it once did, and yet it carries flavors that are rich, layered and familiar. It is designed less for excitement, and more for balance, calibrated to match the body's needs without overwhelming the senses. And then, for those who want it, there is synthesis. Food built molecule by molecule, precisely constructed, the way music is built, note by note. A dish can be tuned to a person's energy, their mood, even their sleep cycle. A person preparing to work gently through the morning might receive something light, airy, and quietly nourishing. A person preparing to rest at the end of a day might be offered something grounding, dense, comforting. The future has learned to cook with time itself. Every bite begins not in a kitchen but in the quiet cycles of living systems, plants unfurling, cultures growing, molecules weaving together. Eating in 3025 begins long before the food ever reaches your hands. When the food is ready, it does not simply appear in a rush, shoved forward in a paper bag or clattered down onto a plate. It arrives slowly, at a pace that suggests eating is not just a need but a ritual. The utensils themselves are simple, stripped of clutter and fuss. No endless drawer of mismatched forks and scratched spoons. Instead, tools are minimal, smooth, almost meditative in the hand. They are designed less for efficiency and more for experience. The way the weight of a spoon settles into your palm. The way a cup holds warmth without scalding. Every object you use in this ritual has been shaped by 1,000 years of refinement, where form and function have merged into something that feels inevitable, like a river flowing exactly where it belongs. The flavors too are balanced, not engineered to startle, not filled with the extremes of salt, sugar, or spice that once chased novelty more than nourishment. Instead, each taste is gentle, layered slowly, unfolding in time. A piece of fruit might carry not one flavor but 5, slipping across your tongue in quiet sequence. A grain might reveal earthy depth when chewed slowly, releasing aromas that drift upward like faint memory. Meals are designed to slow you down, not speed you up. They reward patience, and they invite stillness. The pacing of the meal is perhaps the most radical difference. In 3025, no one eats with one eye on the clock. Meals expand and contract with the person. Some may take only a few minutes if that is all the body asks for. Others may last an hour or 2 or longer, drawn out not by necessity but by choice. Eating has become a way of stretching time, of reminding the body that nourishment is not only fuel but also rhythm. And so each meal becomes more than just food. It becomes a pause in the day, an anchor of calm, a moment where the future reminds itself that even after 1,000 years of change, eating remains one of life's most grounding acts. There are times when you eat alone. And in the future, this is not treated as sad or incomplete. Solitary meals are honored as much as shared ones. To eat alone in 3025 is to sit with yourself, to savor your own company, to feel the quiet companionship of the world around you, the plants that grew the food, the warmth of the cup in your hands, the faint glow of the room adjusting itself to your mood. Eating alone is a kind of meditation, a way of finding rhythm in silence. But there are also shared meals. And these are slow, unhurried gatherings, where the act of eating is as much about presence as it is about nourishment. People sit together, not in stiff rows or rushed lines, but in circles, in clusters, in ways that feel natural. Conversations are unforced, often sparse, because there is no pressure to fill the silence. The food itself provides the pacing, drawing attention back to the table again and again, grounding everyone in the act of simply being there together. Festivals in 3025 often revolve around food, not in the way of gluttony, but in the way of ritual. Communities gather not for spectacle, but for shared calm. Entire gardens may be harvested at once, entire crops brought forward, and people eat slowly under artificial stars, or beside the glow of living light. The act of eating becomes collective, almost ceremonial, binding people not only to one another but also to the cycles of time that still shape life, even 1,000 years ahead. In both solitude and togetherness, eating remains a moment of grounding. It is a way of saying, here I am, here we are. In a world of constant change, food remains a thread, tying body to rhythm, tying people to place, tying the future to the oldest rituals of the past. In the year 3025, a home is less of a fixed structure, and more of a living environment. It is not something built once and left to decay, but something that changes with you, stretching, softening, reshaping, as the years and seasons unfold. Imagine a place that knows how to breathe, a place that knows how to adjust itself in silence. the way a tree shifts toward the light without needing permission. The materials are not dead, no brittle wood cut away from its roots, no stone chiseled until its memory is gone. Instead, the walls and floors are woven from living fibers, composites of organic matter that remain responsive long after they have been shaped. They are smooth to the touch, yet textured enough to remind you of nature's hand. They are sturdy but not rigid, able to bend and curve the way a stalk of grass bends before a breeze. These materials carry within them a quiet intelligence. They do not speak, but they respond. If the air outside is too dry, they release stored moisture. If the sun is too bright, they deepen their hues, creating shade. At night, they absorb the faint hum of the day's activity, storing it as warmth, releasing it slowly back into the rooms, like the fading heat of stones after sunset. The shapes of these homes are not geometric boxes, as once was common. They are softer, rounder, guided by principles of flow rather than efficiency. Corridors curve gently instead of cutting sharp corners. Windows ripple like water, rather than opening as empty squares. Each space seems less built and more grown, as though the home sprouted naturally, like a shell around a creature. The result is a dwelling that feels not like a cage or container, but like an extension of your body. It is shelter without confinement, protection without harshness. A home that is less about ownership and more about belonging. Step inside one of these homes and you will notice that interior design in 3025 has abandoned the clutter of decoration for the depth of sensation. It is not about filling a room with objects, but about shaping the air, the light, and the quiet. There are no shelves overstuffed with trinkets, no buzzing screens, no piles of possessions stacked against walls. Instead, each space is pared down until only what matters remains. This does not create emptiness but fullness, a fullness of calm, of breathing space, of room for the mind to rest. Colors shift with the day. In the morning, surfaces might glow with pale tones, encouraging wakefulness without strain. At midday, cooler shades wash across the walls, balancing the brightness of the sun. In the evening, the palette deepens, dissolving into soft ambers and muted blues, wrapping you gently toward rest. Textures are designed for comfort, not flashy comfort, not indulgence, but quiet reassurance. Fabrics that feel like woven moss, floors that warm gently underfoot, surfaces that soften slightly at your touch. Nothing is harsh, nothing is cold. Even furniture is less an object and more an environment. Chairs that mold themselves to your form, tables that rise and lower with your needs, sleeping surfaces that cradle you like a tide. Scent too is part of design, not the blunt intrusion of perfumes or artificial sprays, but the faintest traces of earth, water, wood, and greenery. The home exhales gently, adjusting itself to seasons, moods, even the weather outside. If rain is falling, you might notice the scent of petrichor carried indoors. If the air is still, the home may release a faint sweetness, reminding you of blossoms. Every detail is tuned toward rest. The future has realized that living well is less about excess and more about harmony. And so, the interiors of tomorrow are quiet symphonies of softness, inviting, balancing, and endlessly patient. Perhaps the most remarkable quality of these homes is their ability to transform with the passing of time. In the morning, A home in 3025 is open and gently energizing, encouraging you to wake and stretch. By day, it expands subtly, walls shifting back, ceilings rising just slightly, windows widening, to give you the sense of spaciousness and light. By evening, the same home folds inward, softening its edges, lowering its light, and cradling you as the world slows down. This is not done with mechanical noise or visible machinery. You do not hear gears turning, or panels sliding, or motors humming. The changes are seamless, as though the house itself breathes with you. A corridor might lengthen without your noticing, until suddenly it feels roomier. A ceiling might slope lower in the evening, until you realize the space feels more intimate. Light, sound and scent adjust not with a switch but with the flow of time itself. At night the transformation is most complete. The walls absorb external noise, leaving silence thick and protective. Windows soften into opacity, glowing faintly like lanterns, preventing the intrusion of darkness while still preserving rest. The bed expands into a cocoon, not enclosing you but holding you steady, the way a body of water holds a swimmer. Some homes even create illusions of the sky indoors, artificial constellations mapped across ceilings, faint shifting colors that mimic auroras, or the slow drift of stars. Others prefer deeper darkness, understanding that true rest often comes from stillness and shadow. In 3025, a home does not remain static. It changes with you, it honors the day's rhythm, it eases the passage from light into dark. Living in such a place feels less like residing in a structure, and more like residing inside a friend, one that always knows when to open, when to shelter, and when to cradle you into sleep. When you step out of a home in the year 3025, there is no jarring transition from the quiet interior to a harsh and crowded world. The boundary between indoors and outdoors has softened across centuries. A door does not slam open or creak shut. It dissolves, it parts, it simply ceases to be solid and becomes an opening, like water parting around a swimmer. You pass through, and you are outside. The air meets you gently. It is tuned. Not sterile, not filtered into blankness, but balanced, carrying just enough warmth to ease your skin, just enough freshness to fill your lungs. It feels neither artificial nor wild. It feels like air ought to feel when the world has learned how to care for itself. The city, if you could even call it that, is not a clash of stone towers and hard pavements. It is more of a landscape where structures rise and flow like cliffs, softened by greenery that grows not at their edges, but through their very walls. Vines thread themselves into the fabric of buildings, trees rise from courtyards and balconies, and waterways thread calmly through the streets. There is no choking hum of traffic, no blare of horns. Movement is quiet, steady, and continuous, like the slow breathing of an animal asleep. As you step into this environment, there is no rush of people shoving past. The flow of bodies is spacious, considerate, designed for harmony. Each person moves at their own pace, but the paths are wide enough, and the rhythms gentle enough, that no one collides or competes. The city has been shaped to accommodate slowness. Everywhere you look, there are signs of life designed not for urgency but for balance. Benches placed where breezes pass most often. Pools of still water reflecting the sky. Walkways that curve to reveal new vistas instead of straight lines that hurry you from one place to another. Even leaving your home in 3025 feels less like a commute, and more like entering a garden. You begin the day not with noise and pressure, but with the quiet reassurance that the world outside has been built to meet you calmly. In this future, the idea of work has shifted. It is no longer the weight of survival pressing daily on the body. It is not a scramble for wages, nor a relentless chase for productivity. Instead, work in 3025 has been pared down to something simpler: contribution. People give their energy, their thought, their creativity, in ways that feel natural, supported always by the calm infrastructure around them. You may walk toward a workspace, but it does not look like an office or a factory. It may be a shared hall, airy and open, filled with light and greenery. It may be a smaller chamber tuned to your needs, quiet, cocooned, a place where concentration feels like rest. For some, work may even happen outdoors, under trees, whose roots have been coaxed into woven platforms. Technology, by now, has absorbed much of what was once exhausting. Machines hum in the background, tending to repetitive tasks, while systems of intelligence anticipate what is needed before you must ask. But rather than replacing human activity, these technologies create space for gentler contributions. A person may spend the morning tending to a local archive, curating memories. Another may help guide the growth of gardens that feed the community. Someone else may devote themselves to storytelling, to teaching, to the quiet work of passing knowledge forward. The tasks are never rushed. They expand or contract depending on what each person has to give that day. If energy is high, one might work longer. If energy is low, one works less. No one is shamed for needing rest, because rest itself is seen as work of a different kind, the work of maintaining a healthy rhythm. Even within tasks, the pacing is deliberate. A future citizen may spend an entire morning arranging objects in harmony, repairing something with precision, or studying a single piece of information until it is fully understood. Focus is prized, not multitasking. The body and the mind are allowed to do one thing at a time, and to do it gently. This, then, is work in 3025. Not frantic, not draining, but balanced. Work that gives shape to the day without taking too much from it. And when the day's contribution has ended, there is no collapse into exhaustion. Leisure in 3025 flows naturally from work, as if one state blends into the other without sharp edges. Some spend their afternoons walking slowly through gardens that curve across rooftops and stretch into the air on woven bridges of greenery. The plants are both wild and tended, offering spaces of shade, blossoms, and water. To wander here is not to shop or to perform errands, but simply to exist among living things. Others take up quiet pursuits. Music remains, though it is often softer than you might expect. Tones that blend with natural sound. Rhythms that unfold slowly over long minutes. Painting exists too, though pigments now shift with light, so that a canvas becomes not one image but many, drifting with time. Reading continues, though books are less bound in paper and more projected softly onto surfaces, their text swelling or shrinking at the reader's pace. Leisure is not always solitary. There are gatherings where games are played, but these are not competitions. They are more like shared puzzles, where people move together toward harmony rather than conflict. There are festivals where food is prepared and eaten in community, not for spectacle but for rhythm. Above all, leisure in 3025 is not about distraction. It is not about filling empty hours. It is about restoring balance, stretching into calm, giving the mind and body something gentle to dwell upon. Whether walking alone through a moss-covered corridor, or sitting in company while the stars shift overhead, Leisure becomes less about entertainment and more about alignment. By the close of the day, a citizen of 3025 does not feel spent or restless. They feel steady. Work and leisure, effort and rest, solitude and community, all of it blending into a cycle as natural as breath. This is the life of an ordinary person, 1,000 years ahead. Not dramatic, not heroic, but calm, balanced, and deeply human. In the year 3025, travel has lost the sharp edges it once had. There are no honking horns, no grinding brakes, no bodies pressed tightly together in rushing trains. Moving through a city has become less about urgency and more about flow. Some journeys are made simply by walking, but even walking feels different here. Pathways are soft beneath the feet, alive with subtle give, almost like stepping along a forest trail. The ground adjusts its firmness according to who steps upon it, cushioning those who need it, steadying itself for those who walk quickly. There are no curbs to trip over, no endless slabs of concrete, only continuous surfaces that guide you gently forward. But not everyone walks. Some choose to glide. Pathways themselves can shift into moving belts of gentle motion, carrying people along at a pace that feels like drifting across water. The belts do not jolt or lurch. They are silent, steady, designed to mimic the natural speed of a person strolling at ease. To ride them is not to surrender control, but to accept a gift of momentum. There are also floating systems, quiet pods that hover a few feet above the ground, shaped less like vehicles, and more like bubbles of air. Step into one, and it envelops you with transparent walls that ripple faintly, like liquid glass. The pod glides along its path in near silence, the world sliding past outside. It is not a vehicle that cages you, but one that carries you gently, leaving you time to look, to breathe, to rest. Every mode of transport shares one quality: calm. Journeys do not demand attention, they allow it to wander. Travel is not a task to endure, but an experience of drifting through space. As you travel, whether walking or gliding, the city around you unfolds like a garden stretched across centuries. Structures are tall but not towering in arrogance. They rise like cliffs softened by moss, their surfaces covered in greenery, water trickling down their sides into small channels that feed the walkways below. Sound in the city is not the harsh clamor of engines or the metallic scrape of construction. Instead, there is a background hum, low, resonant, steady. It is the sound of systems working in harmony, tuned to resemble natural rhythms. Some say the city hum is modeled after the sound of wind in ancient caves, or the low drone of oceans moving against cliffs. Whatever its origin, it is designed to soothe rather than to overwhelm. Greenery is everywhere. Branches spill across balconies, leaves stretch overhead, creating patches of filtered light. Rooftop gardens connect across woven bridges, allowing plants to stretch from one dwelling to the next. Waterways cross the city like veins, some narrow and trickling, others broad enough to reflect entire skies. You catch glimpses of fish drifting lazily below the surface, their movement reminding you that even here, in this city of the future, the pulse of life continues unchanged. The air itself feels different. It is neither stagnant nor crowded, but carefully balanced. Breezes flow along deliberate channels, carrying the scents of flowers, rain, and green growth. Every breath feels like stepping into the open air of a meadow, even though you are deep within a city. As you move along, you notice that the pace of the city matches your own. There is no rushing, no crowding, no pressure to hurry. Instead, the entire environment seems to adjust itself, so that movement is never harsh, never jarring, always in harmony with the human body. The city is not a place to endure, it is a place to drift through, like a forest or a dream. Travel in 3025 is not about efficiency alone, though efficiency is certainly there. A journey that once would have taken hours might now take minutes. And yet those minutes are never wasted. They are not stripped of value, as if travel were only an inconvenience between destinations. Instead, the journey itself is treated as an experience, an opportunity for stillness in motion. Inside a floating pod, you might find the walls fading into translucence, giving you a wide view of the sky. The world passes slowly, almost dreamlike, and you sit in silence, watching as structures rise and fall, as light glints against water, as greenery sways in soft breezes. The pod moves steadily, but it never demands your attention. It leaves you free to drift into your thoughts, or to close your eyes and let the hum of the city carry you. On gliding walkways, the rhythm of motion becomes a kind of meditation. You feel your body moving but without effort. Your eyes wander across the city, and your mind settles into a pace that matches your body's flow. The world seems to stretch itself out, each detail arriving slowly enough to notice, gently enough to rest within. Even walking is not hurried. To walk in this city is to weave between gardens, to follow the curve of paths that lead you not only to where you must go, but also to moments of stillness. Benches placed by pools invite you to pause. Overhangs of leaves invite you to linger in shade. The city does not simply permit you to slow down, it encourages it. And so every journey becomes less about reaching a destination and more about existing along the way. By the time you arrive, you are not drained or flustered. You are calmer, steadier, as if the act of moving through the city has itself been a form of rest. In 3025, travel has ceased to be a battle. It has become a meditation, a reminder that even in motion one can be still. In the year 3025, learning is no longer pressed into noisy classrooms or rigid lecture halls. Instead, it takes place in environments designed to calm the mind before opening it. To learn, you do not sit beneath fluorescent lights at a desk lined with identical chairs. You enter spaces that feel like sanctuaries. A learning space might be a chamber woven from living trees, their branches curving to form a natural dome overhead. Sunlight filters through leaves, scattering shifting patterns across the floor. Soft cushions rest in circles where people gather, not to face a single authority, but to share in the act of learning together. The soundscape is gentle, the hush of flowing water nearby, the rustle of leaves, perhaps a distant hum of the city blending into nature. Other spaces might appear entirely different, rooms carved from smooth stone, quiet as caves, where glowing surfaces float in the air like gentle lanterns. These glowing panels do not overwhelm with information. They wait until the learner chooses to touch them, and only then do they open, revealing layers of knowledge at the pace one can absorb. Some people learn outdoors entirely, walking slowly through gardens as projections shimmer above flowers or over still ponds, guiding thoughts without ever pulling attention away from the natural world. In every form, learning begins with stillness. The mind is prepared not by pressure but by quiet. Before information is offered, peace is established. Knowledge in 3025 is not forced into the mind as quickly as possible. It is not memorized under duress, nor tested with rigid examinations. Instead, knowledge is absorbed the way water seeps into soil, slowly, gently, steadily. One method is immersion. If you wish to learn about the stars, you do not read words alone. You might sit beneath a dome where the sky itself unfolds, planets and nebulae drifting around you, their patterns explained not with urgency, but with calm, steady narration. If you wish to learn about plants, you may walk through a garden where roots and stems project their inner workings into the air around them, each process unfolding at a pace that mirrors your own breath. Another method is shared memory. Some technologies allow a person to experience the impressions and thoughts of others, not overwhelming downloads, but gentle impressions. To learn history, for example, you might feel the quiet awe of someone standing at an ancient ruin, or the calm routine of someone cooking food centuries before. Knowledge is not only factual but embodied, arriving as sensation and rhythm, allowing you to remember it not just with your mind but with your body. And then there is dialogue. In 3025, conversation remains a vital way of learning. People gather in circles, not to debate or argue, but to ask questions slowly, to share perspectives, to let ideas breathe. A single topic might be discussed over the span of days or weeks, each layer unfolding gradually, never rushed to a conclusion. Learning is not measured by speed, but by depth. A single idea might be explored so fully that it shapes the learner's perception forever. The goal is not to finish learning but to deepen it endlessly. In this future, there is no boundary between childhood and adulthood when it comes to knowledge. People do not stop learning when they reach a certain age. Instead, learning becomes as natural and continuous as breathing. Each person chooses their pace. Some return daily to learning spaces, spending hours immersed in quiet study. Others drift in occasionally, picking up threads of knowledge over months or years. There is no shame in learning slowly, no pressure to advance quickly. The act of learning itself is considered valuable, regardless of the outcome. Lifelong learning has also erased competition. There are no grades, no ranks, no measures that pit one person against another. Instead, progress is measured only against one's own rhythm, what one has absorbed, what one has understood, what one has allowed to settle into the self. A person may spend years learning the intricacies of a single art, or may wander endlessly between fields, never finishing one before beginning another. Both are valued equally. And because learning is continuous, it weaves seamlessly into daily life. Walking through the city, you may pause at a fountain where water is flowing in a pattern that illustrates physics. Eating at a communal table, you may hear a story that contains quiet lessons about history or ethics. Even rest is considered part of learning, for a resting mind integrates knowledge more deeply than one that is restless. The atmosphere is never hurried. It is a recognition that knowledge is infinite, and that infinity cannot be rushed. Each lesson is a pebble dropped into a still pool, rippling outward slowly, settling only when the water is calm again. In 3025, learning is not a race. It is a lifelong companionship, an endless, gentle unfolding of the world. In 3025, food is not rushed into existence, it is coaxed into being. The process begins not in fields of industrial noise but in soft environments where plants, fungi, and proteins are grown under conditions designed to be both efficient and beautiful. You might imagine gardens, vertical, spiraling upwards in slow curls, their surfaces covered in leafy greens, fruits and grains. These gardens are alive not only with plants but with subtle lights that imitate dawn and dusk, ensuring growth happens with a rhythm that feels natural. There are no harsh fluorescents, no mechanical clamor. The light is soft, the air moist, and the hum of growth is steady and soothing. Proteins, too, are cultivated without cruelty. Cells grow into sustenance in chambers that resemble still pools, their surfaces glowing faintly, rippling occasionally like calm water disturbed by a breath. These pools are tended not by frantic hands but by quiet caretakers, who move slowly, adjusting conditions with gestures as gentle as tending a candle flame. Preparation of food is equally calm. Machines do not roar or hiss. Instead, they murmur softly, slicing and heating in silence, designed to blend into the atmosphere rather than intrude upon it. In many places, food is prepared communally. People gather to peel fruits, to crush grains, to mix ingredients with deliberate care. The act of preparing a meal is not separate from the act of enjoying it. Both are seen as part of the same continuum. In this future, food is not something that arrives hastily on a plate. It is something that emerges, slowly, patiently, as a natural unfolding of the world itself. When food is finally eaten, the experience is not one of distraction or hurry. Meals are slow, meditative, and deeply sensory. Each bite is designed to balance nourishment with subtle pleasure. Flavors are not engineered to overwhelm or to shock the tongue. Instead, they are carefully tuned, like soft chords in music. Layers of sweetness, earthiness, warmth, and coolness blending together in harmony. Nothing is excessive. Nothing lingers too long. Every taste arrives, settles, and fades like a ripple in water. Textures are equally gentle. Grains are soft but not mushy. Fruits are tender, their juices released gradually, not bursting in sudden torrents. Proteins are light, dissolving without strain, designed to nourish without heaviness. Even the drinks, whether water infused with minerals or teas drawn from calming plants, are made to slip quietly down the throat, leaving only a lingering sense of ease. The atmosphere of eating is as important as the food itself. Meals often take place in quiet, open spaces. Tables are long, inviting groups to gather without rush. Background sounds are hushed. Water trickling, leaves rustling, perhaps a faint hum like distant wind. Light falls softly across the table, not too bright, not too dim, shifting gently as though to remind the body of time's slow movement. Eating is not treated as a necessity alone, it is treated as a pause in the day, a ritual of stillness, a chance for the body to remember its rhythms. In 3025, each meal is less about filling, and more about unfolding of flavor, of calm, of connection. While some may eat alone in quiet corners, much of food in 3025 is shared. Communal meals are central, not as loud feasts of competition, but as gatherings of presence. Imagine a long table beneath trees, branches woven into arches overhead, lanterns glowing softly along the surface. People gather not in haste, but in slow arrivals, settling into cushions or low seats. The meal does not begin with announcement or ceremony, it simply unfolds, as food is passed gently from one to another, as bowls of grains and fruits circulate, as cups of warm tea are refilled without urgency. Conversation drifts like the meal itself, quiet, unforced, often punctuated by pauses, Silence is not uncomfortable here, it is respected. People may eat side by side without words, sharing only the act of being present together. When words come, they are soft. Stories told slowly, thoughts shared without pressure to entertain. There are rituals too, small, simple ones. A moment of stillness before eating, hands resting lightly on the table, eyes closing to breathe in the scent of the food. A quiet thanks not spoken loudly but held inwardly, a recognition that nourishment comes from countless layers of life and care. The meal ends gradually, not with abrupt departure. People linger sipping warm drinks, watching the soft glow of light shift through branches above. Some may drift into naps resting nearby, as others clear the dishes with unhurried movements. The line between eating and resting blurs, both seen as essential, both part of the same cycle. In 3025, food is not only sustenance. It is rhythm, ritual and community. A reminder that to eat is not merely to survive, but to rest, to connect, and to belong. In the year 3025, work has become something different from what you know today. It is not hurried. It is not a matter of endless hours, of exhaustion, of racing toward deadlines that blur into each other. Instead, it is softened, reshaped into something more natural, something that fits into life like a gentle tide rolling in and out. Most people work not to chase survival, but to contribute a piece of themselves into the slow turning of society. Machines with their quiet, tireless presence carry much of the heavy labor. They harvest, they transport, they assemble, always with an absence of clamor. They hum, they glide, they shift. Never demanding, never urgent. The work that remains for humans is the kind that leans toward creativity, care, and observation. There are occupations centered around tending the vertical gardens, not because machines cannot do it, but because people find calm in touching leaves, in noticing the slow unfolding of growth. Others work in design, shaping buildings not for grandeur, but for comfort, for quietness, for the way light falls into a room at dusk. Teaching, too, remains an honored role. In 3025, learning is not a rushed absorption of facts, but a shared exploration. Teachers guide not only knowledge but patience, helping students settle into the rhythm of thought the way one might settle into a warm chair. Even roles that seem technical are reshaped. Engineers, healers, artists, archivists, all carry out their work with long pauses, breaks woven into their days like natural breaths. No one is expected to rush. No one is measured only by output. Work is treated as something cyclical, like breathing in and breathing out. It is a way of engaging with life, rather than a force that pulls against it. In this way, occupations of the future do not weigh upon people. They flow through them, slowly, softly, like a stream that curves through a valley, always present, always moving, but never rushing. If you were to observe a day in the life of a worker in 3025, you would find it unfolding with the calm regularity of a long afternoon. The day does not begin with alarm clocks or frantic commutes. Instead, it begins with a gradual rising, a body stirred awake by soft light and temperature shifts in the home. Work begins not at a fixed harsh hour, but when a person feels steady, rested, and ready. For someone tending the gardens, the morning may begin with a quiet walk among the spiraling greenery, touching leaves still damp with mist, adjusting the light so that plants feel the rhythm of dawn. For someone in teaching, It may begin by gathering with others in a circular space, no desks, no rows, only cushions, and a low hum of conversation, easing into shared reflection. Tasks are performed slowly. An architect may spend hours adjusting the curve of a wall, not out of stress but out of patience, shaping it so that shadows fall in just the right way at twilight. A healer may sit with someone not only to provide treatment, but to sit in silence beside them, recognizing that presence itself is part of care. Breaks are not interruptions, they are integrated. A person might work for an hour, then pause to drink tea, to stretch, to close their eyes in a patch of sunlight. These pauses are not considered laziness, but wisdom. They prevent strain, they keep the body in balance, they remind people that time need not be conquered, only accompanied. The rhythm of the workday is closer to that of seasons than of clocks. It flows gently from morning into midday, from midday into evening, with long stretches of stillness threaded between moments of effort. At the end of the day, work concludes not with exhaustion, but with a quiet setting aside, a sense that enough has been done, and that tomorrow will come slowly, in its own time. In 3025, one's occupation is not a rigid title. It is not something fixed like a badge. Instead, it is seen as an extension of a person's rhythm and curiosity, something that may shift gently over the course of life. A person may spend some years tending gardens, then later move into teaching, then later still into the quiet preservation of archives. Each transition is not seen as failure or as reinvention, but as a natural unfolding, like a tree that first blossoms, then fruits, then shades the ground below. Occupations are chosen not out of desperation, but out of alignment. They are invitations, rather than obligations. Work is also deeply communal. Few tasks are done entirely alone. Most occupations involve others, not in the sense of crowded offices or noisy gatherings, but in small, steady groups. People collaborate the way one might share a long walk, side by side, unhurried, conversations drifting in and out, silences filling the spaces between. Fulfillment in work does not come from climbing ladders or achieving recognition. It comes from the gentle certainty that one's efforts ripple outward, even in small ways. A gardener sees their plants nourish a meal. A healer sees someone rise from rest a little stronger. An artist sees their work soften the corners of a home. Each act, however minor, folds into the larger rhythm of community. In the end, occupations of the future are less about doing and more about being, about existing in relation to others, to the world, to the slow unfolding of life. Work is not a race to the finish, but a path walked quietly, step by step, with pauses to notice the trees, the air, and the gentle hum of time itself. Movement in the year 3025 is not what you know today. It is not the constant growl of engines, the clamor of horns, or the restless vibration of traffic. Instead, movement is softened into near stillness. The city itself seems to glide, and people drift from one place to another as though carried along by invisible tides. There are no streets in the way you imagine them now. Instead, there are wide, open pathways that double as gardens, shaded with trees, lined with quiet pools of water. These paths are shared not by cars or buses, but by vehicles so soft and quiet that they seem to whisper through the air. They hover a short distance above the ground, sliding forward without wheels, without friction, guided by silent currents of magnetic force. The sound they make is not a roar, but a sigh, barely audible, a breath against the air. When several pass by at once, they create, not noise, but a kind of gentle background hum, like wind across tall grass. Most journeys are short, because the city is designed to keep things close. Homes, gardens, learning halls, places of rest and gathering, all are woven together so that no one must travel far unless they wish to. And when they do, travel itself becomes part of the experience, slow, scenic, unhurried, as though each movement is an opportunity to see the world around them from a new angle. The future city does not ask you to hurry, it lets you linger, even as you move. Imagine stepping into one of these vehicles. There is no door to slam, no engine to start. You simply step inside, and the space adjusts to you. Seating that forms itself to your body, lighting that shifts to your preference, air that cools or warms in gentle waves. There are no buttons to press, no maps to unfold. You speak or even think of your destination, and the vehicle glides forward without hesitation, carrying you along the smooth channels of the city. As you move, there is no sensation of jolting or swaying. The ride is perfectly even, like floating upon a calm lake where the water has settled into glass. Outside, the city passes slowly, even though you know you are moving quickly. Buildings are tall yet softened with greenery, their surfaces covered with climbing plants that ripple slightly in the wind. Above, skyways are strung like ribbons, where other vehicles pass, gliding as silently as your own. There are no traffic lights, no stops and starts. The vehicles flow around one another with effortless precision, each one aware of the other, each one adjusting speed and direction so that no collisions occur. To watch them from above is to see a dance, a slow, synchronized weaving, more like the drift of fish in a school than the chaos of traffic. And yet, despite the grace of it, many people still choose to walk. Walking has not been abandoned in 3025. If anything, it has become the most beloved form of travel. The paths are shaded, cooled, designed for long, easy strolls. When people walk, they are not rushing to arrive. They are savoring the journey, looking at the plants, listening to the subtle sounds of water channels running beside the pathways, pausing when they wish. Movement in the future city is never about speed, it is about ease. Perhaps the most remarkable change in the way people travel is not the technology but the philosophy behind it. Travel is not treated as wasted time. It is not something to be minimized, shaved down to the smallest possible fraction of an hour. Instead, it is honored as part of life's rhythm, a transition between places, a moment of reflection, a chance to breathe. In the year 3025, journeys are designed to be restorative. Vehicles are not cramped or utilitarian. They are comfortable, soothing, even meditative. Some are filled with soft music, others with subtle fragrances, others still with windows that shift into images of forests, oceans, or skies. You may find yourself closing your eyes and arriving before you even realize the passage of time. Longer journeys, between cities, across continents, are equally softened. Trains that float above the earth at astonishing speeds do so without vibration, without sound, with interiors so quiet that passengers often describe the experience as akin to sitting in a still room, watching the scenery melt by in silence. Travel is not a burden, but a reprieve. This philosophy extends to walking as well. To walk in the future city is to weave yourself gently into the rhythm of life. Pathways encourage slowness. Benches are everywhere, shaded and welcoming, inviting pauses. Water trickles along canals beside the walkways, carrying with it a sound like endless quiet rain. And so, in 3025, travel is no longer an ordeal, nor a rush. It is a continuation of rest, a reminder that movement need not be fast to be meaningful. To travel is simply to drift, to float, to carry your body through the world with the ease of a leaf on water. In the year 3025, learning does not begin and end with childhood. It is not confined to long hours in crowded rooms or measured by tests and grades. Instead, learning is considered a lifelong rhythm, as natural and unhurried as breathing. People drift in and out of learning spaces, not because they must, but because they wish to, because curiosity itself is treated as nourishment. The places where this happens are nothing like schools or lecture halls of today. Imagine wide, open spaces that feel closer to gardens than classrooms. Roofs that shift with the light, filtering sunshine into a soft golden glow. Floors covered not with cold tiles, but with woven mats, mosses, and living surfaces that soften footsteps. Around you there are no rows of desks or rigid chairs. Instead, there are cushions, alcoves, flowing benches carved from polished stone, and quiet pools where reflections shimmer and ripple. Knowledge in 3025 is not delivered by teachers standing at the front of a room, speaking endlessly to a passive crowd. Instead, learning happens in conversation, with people, with systems, with environments. You can walk into a hall of learning and simply ask a question aloud, and the space itself responds. Walls may shift to display images. Floors may ripple with projected maps. The air itself may fill with soft sounds and voices answering with context, history, and explanation. And yet, despite this immense technology, learning is never overwhelming. It is slow, it is measured. Information is not hurled at you all at once but revealed gradually, like peeling layers from a fruit, each one savored before moving on to the next. The halls are quiet, always quiet. No bells ring, no clocks tick, no interruptions call you away. You are allowed to linger with knowledge as long as you wish, to sit in stillness with a thought, to close your eyes and absorb it as though it were music. In 3025, people do not rush through their studies. There is no expectation that one must learn quickly or master everything at once. Instead, the future recognizes something the past often ignored, that knowledge settles more deeply when it is allowed to arrive slowly, like rain soaking into dry earth. Imagine sitting in a circle of learners. Some are children, others are old, others somewhere in between. Age is no barrier here. Each person brings their curiosity, and the group begins not with answers but with questions. What is this plant? Where did this river once flow? What did people of the past believe about the stars? The questions float upward, and the learning space responds. Images ripple across the air, gentle, translucent, never too bright. The plant appears before you, magnified, its veins and fibers revealed. The river's history flows across the floor in soft blue light, showing its ancient path through time. The stars shift above your head into constellations both ancient and newly discovered. When someone does not understand, the explanation does not grow sharper or faster. Instead, it slows down further. The system repeats itself in simpler ways, offering metaphors, offering visuals, offering comparisons, until the learner nods in quiet recognition. There is no shame in not knowing. To not know is seen as an invitation to explore. Memory itself is treated gently. People no longer attempt to hold every fact, every figure inside their minds. They know that memory fades, and this is not considered failure. Instead, knowledge is always available, always waiting. The future has built archives so complete and so accessible that forgetting is no longer a weakness. To recall something is as simple as asking aloud, or even thinking of it. And yet, despite this, people still love to remember things themselves. They take joy in carrying facts within their minds, not because they must, but because knowledge is like a companion, a soft treasure to hold close. In this future, knowledge is not power, not competition, not a weapon to wield over others. It is nourishment. It is shared freely, as one shares food or air. To withhold knowledge would feel as strange as to withhold water from someone who is thirsty. There is no testing, no ranking, no grading. No one is measured against another. Instead, the philosophy of learning is rooted in curiosity, in the simple human urge to understand. If one person loves to study plants, they spend their life wandering gardens, asking questions of roots and petals. If another is drawn to the stars, they spend years lying beneath the night sky, learning the slow dance of galaxies. If another is curious about the past, they walk among archives and museums, piecing together the fragments of history. There is no hurry to decide what you will study. People drift between subjects their whole lives, exploring this and that, sometimes circling back, sometimes abandoning one interest for another. No one is ever told that it is too late to learn, or that they should already know. Every day is considered a good day to begin again. Perhaps most soothing of all, the philosophy of knowledge in 3025 is that you do not learn in order to achieve or to become. You learn simply because it is joyful, because it is calming, because it gives shape and rhythm to the hours. And so the quiet halls of learning are always filled, not with noise, not with stress, but with people drifting gently among ideas, listening, asking, pondering, smiling. Learning is simply part of life's fabric, woven so gently into the day that it feels less like work and more like breathing. In the year 3025, a museum is not the same as it is today. It is not a building of echoing corridors, where visitors shuffle past glass cases, whispering, with a folded map in hand. A museum in this distant future is more like a living memory, an archive that breathes, listens, and guides you without ever hurrying you along. Imagine approaching such a place. From outside, the museum does not shout its presence. It is not a grand facade of columns or a fortress of stone. Instead, it rests in the landscape as though it has grown there, a structure of soft curves and muted colors, blending into its surroundings. The walls seem to shift slightly, catching light in gentle ripples, as if the building itself remembers the sunlight of different centuries and plays them back for you. You walk toward an entrance that does not require a door. The space simply opens, like a curtain of air parting. And as you step inside, you do not hear the chatter of crowds, or the harsh squeak of shoes on marble floors. Instead, you hear a hush, a deep, velvety quiet, almost like entering a forest clearing at dawn. The museum has already slowed your pace, already lulled you into stillness. There are no maps, no arrows, no long, impatient lines. The museum does not need them. It listens for your curiosity and arranges itself to meet it. If you arrive thinking of ancient seas, you may find yourself standing before a shimmering display of ammonites and coral. If you arrive with a passing thought of your grandmother's kitchen, the museum may quietly unfold a gallery of cooking pots, spoons, and familiar utensils, centuries old but instantly recognizable. The air itself seems to hum with presence. Objects are not simply placed on pedestals. They are wrapped in atmosphere, surrounded by subtle sights, sounds, and scents that remind you of their origins. A medieval shoe is not just a piece of leather under glass. It carries with it the faint, ghostly smell of tanned hide, the suggestion of muddy earth, the echo of footsteps along a cobblestone street. A fragment of a smartphone is not merely plastic and glass. It hums faintly, as though whispering the faint vibrations of countless notifications, the ghostly flicker of blue light that once entranced so many eyes. You wander slowly, unhurried, for there is no set path. Time does not press upon you. The museum opens itself like a dream, guiding you softly toward the past, not as history, but as memory, gently cradled. The 21st century, your own time, has become ancient by 3025, and yet, it is not forgotten. Entire galleries are devoted to what people once called the digital age, though by now it seems almost laughably physical. Here, someone from 3025 might pause before a display of rectangular slabs, smartphones as you know them, each slightly different, yet all oddly similar. Some are cracked, others pristine, many lifeless, their screens forever black. To a future person, they are not tools of connection, but artifacts of obsession, curiosities that once consumed human attention. The museum does not mock them, but presents them tenderly, as though saying, "This was once important and therefore it is still precious." Next to them might rest a laptop, opened as though waiting for hands that will never return, a keyboard, its letters worn smooth, a corded mouse, its red light long extinguished. People in 3025 do not type anymore, but they lean in to examine the worn letters, curious at the thought of striking each key individually to make words appear. Further along, there may be shelves filled with plastic, toys, bottles, containers of every kind. Plastic, once so ordinary, has become a strange and delicate thing in the future, a material that has survived long after its usefulness faded. A water bottle from your own century, preserved perfectly, might be treated with the same quiet reverence as an ancient amphora from the Mediterranean is today. Visitors stand before it, wondering at the world that made billions of such things, that drank from them, carried them, discarded them, and yet in doing so, left behind an enduring fossil record. And then there are the cultural relics, books printed on paper, their pages yellowed and curling, posters advertising concerts long past, a cinema ticket stub, the ink faded, but the date still legible, 2023, 2019, 2007. Future visitors hover before such things, not to laugh, not to criticize, but to feel a soft connection. These scraps of paper, brittle and fragile, are threads across centuries, reminding them that people once celebrated, traveled, laughed and gathered, just as they still do now. The museum whispers, they were not so different, they carried small objects in their pockets, they kept trinkets, mementos, tokens of memory. They longed for connection, they built tools to feel less alone. Standing within the museums of 3025, surrounded by relics of the past, a strange and soothing feeling takes hold. The future does not scorn the past, nor does it idolize it. Instead, it regards it gently, as one might look back at childhood drawings. Simple, clumsy, sometimes wasteful, but filled with sincerity. Visitors drift slowly, pausing to look not just at the objects, but at the invisible weight of lives they once touched. A cracked shoe, a burned CD, a scratched wristwatch. None of these are treasures in the traditional sense, yet in the quiet halls of the museum, they are treated as precious fragments of humanity. And here lies the calm philosophy of the future, that nothing is meaningless simply because it is old or broken or small. Everything that once mattered to someone matters still, and therefore it is worth remembering. The museums of 3025 do not try to overwhelm you with facts. They do not force you to memorize names or dates. Instead, they ask you to stand quietly in the presence of time. They invite you to imagine the people who once held these objects, who once called them new, who once thought them ordinary. They invite you to see yourself reflected in them, not as a visitor from the future, but as a thread in the same long fabric of human life. And as you wander further, the thought may come to you slow and steady. One day your own life, your own small objects will be here too, preserved, remembered. Not because they are grand, but because they are yours. And that, in the end, is enough. The museum holds you in this thought, wrapping you in its quiet. Time softens. Memory lingers. And you drift gently onward, into the corridors of the future's past. The museum widens into another hall, one not filled with shoes or bottles or paper, but with the machines of your age, those strange devices that once seemed impossibly advanced, but now, in the year 3025, appear quaint, almost playful. Here stands a car, not a sleek levitating pod, but a bulky rectangle of metal, sitting motionless on 4 round wheels. To the people of the future, it looks both primitive and remarkable, an entire room on wheels, powered by fire trapped in a box, roaring across roads. They lean close to examine the steering wheel, the dashboard, the knobs and dials that once instructed drivers. Imagine the bemusement of a child from 3025, seeing a gear shift and being told that once, humans used their hands to wrestle with machines just to make them move forward. Not far away, a relic of aviation hangs suspended in the air, a passenger jet, sleek for its time but now strangely heavy and simple. Its engines rest silent, its seats empty. People of the future wander through it slowly, marveling at the idea that hundreds of humans once packed themselves tightly into this machine, rising above the clouds, sustained by wings of metal. Today, flight is effortless. But the museum preserves the effort, the early experiments, the bravery of people willing to strap themselves into a tube of steel and trust it to the sky. And in another corner, a typewriter, small, portable. Its keys clack when pressed, each striking a ribbon to leave a mark of ink. To the people of 3025, this is not just a machine. It is an echo of thought made physical, the beginnings of words spilling onto a page. They touch it gently, hearing the mechanical click, feeling the solid rhythm of letters carved into place. It feels heavy, deliberate, enduring. All around you, machines stand silent, no longer useful, but still dignified. They are not gone. They are simply resting, admired as old friends, remembered as stepping stones toward what came after. In another gallery, the technology becomes smaller, quieter, Less about machines that moved people, more about tools that once lived inside homes, kitchens and pockets. Imagine a microwave oven, its door slightly ajar, its buttons lined with numbers. To someone of your century, it is nothing special, a buzzing box that heats leftovers. But in 3025, it is treated as extraordinary. A chamber where food could be transformed in seconds by invisible waves. A future child may stand before it, whispering, "So this is how they ate. This is how they warmed their meals." Beside it, a washing machine, a dryer, heavy drums, still and silent now. Once they spun endlessly with water and fabric, humming in every household. People of the future look at them in awe, wondering at a world where washing clothes was a chore, where humans carried baskets of laundry and measured powdered soap, waiting as machines clattered for hours. Then there are the small things, a pocket calculator, a cassette tape, a floppy disk, each preserved behind soft glass, each described with care. Future visitors find them charming, puzzling, almost toy-like. How could something so small, so fragile, once hold knowledge, music, numbers, entire memories? They laugh gently, but with affection. Not mocking, only marveling at how much was once achieved with so little. What is everyday for one age becomes wondrous for another. And so the museum holds these tools in place, letting them shine, not as outdated relics, but as reminders of creativity, resourcefulness, and the quiet persistence of human invention. As your visit through the museums of the future draws toward its end, the halls grow quieter still. The objects seem to fade, not in presence, but in urgency. You are left with impressions more than facts. Shadows of shoes, glimmers of plastic, echoes of humming machines. The past drifts softly into the background, as though the museum itself is gently closing its doors around you. The lesson is not shouted, not even spoken. It hums in the air, that every tool, every object, every invention is only temporary. And yet, none of it is ever lost. Each fragment of human effort leaves its trace, each attempt to solve a problem, each machine built, each item carried in a pocket, all become threads, woven into the endless fabric of memory. You step slowly, feeling time itself loosen. The future regards the past not with judgment, but with kindness. And you carry that kindness with you now, into the stillness beyond the museum. And so you have wandered far 1,000 years into the future, through gardens of glass, towers of light, quiet oceans, and silent museums. You have seen what remains, what changes, and what gently continues. In this future there is no rush, no urgency, no sharp edges. Only continuity, only memory, only the steady unfolding of time. The people of 3025 live, dream and rest, much as you do now. And you too may rest, carrying no burden, no weight, only the calm certainty that life continues, that all things are remembered, and that sleep, like time itself, arrives softly, steadily, without end. So let your eyes grow heavier. Let the echoes of distant centuries fade. Let yourself drift backward or forward, it hardly matters now, until there is no museum, no city, no century at all, only breath, only stillness, only rest. Sleep well.